This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and welcome everybody to this episode of the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. Lisa Cooper. Hi.
Hey there. Yeah, so happy to join you.
Well,
yeah,
I'm so happy to have you. And you are literally one of, when I started this podcast, or in the run up to starting this podcast a little over a year ago, about 15 months ago, I had a list of people who I said, yeah, if I can do it, I would love to talk to him and her and her and him. And your name was in that little handful of names. And call me procrastinator, call me, I don't know, shy, whatever that is. But it took all this time until now before I could ask you and get you on. So I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. I think also podcasts have, obviously within COVID, podcasts have been sort of a recognized communication medium, but I think you've taken it and just run with it and really given us a really good diversity of different people and stories and doing great work. So happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the fallout from this, like you said, I've gotten to talk with a lot of interesting people. I've learned so much over these last 14, 15 months. So let's see what I can learn from you. I can remember way back when I first came here. I don't know exactly when, but I remember seeing you on TV, on the news, talking about things. I'm like, wow. There's a place for us to be heard. And by us, I mean Americans in Norway in general, and more specifically, Black Americans in Norway, because there aren't that many of us, and we do have varied backgrounds. So it just felt good to see you on the news talking about the things you talk about. How did this happen? How did you come to be an American voice in Norway?
I think it was very instrumental. A very good friend of mine who was very active in Democrats Abroad. This was before Barack Obama, so we're talking 2007, I think. Yeah. Who just suggested to me that I get involved in Democrats Abroad, that I could be a powerful voice there, and politics and American politics have always been an interest, but I have to admit I really wasn't half as knowledgeable about American politics then as I am now. And they just suggested to me that I, volunteer and to be perfectly honest, one of the main reasons I was asked to be on TV so much was because I was one of the only ones that could really speak Norwegian.
Yes, yeah.
And the others in Democrats Abroad. But I also think what became very quickly apparent was this direct link with me and Barack Obama, because he obviously was the candidate. Yeah. And to have an African-American talking about another African-American became a very powerful media picture.
I remember how much chaos, but in a comfortable kind of way, an interesting kind of way, a loving kind of way, when it became known that this relatively unknown Black American guy is going to run for president. And Norway went wild with that. And then here you come.
Yeah, but I think it was, because there were so many different things that were happening at once. Yes. One was, the immigration and diversity in Norway was becoming more and more salient. We're getting more and more immigrants, because when I first moved here in 1989, there were 2% immigrants. And at that time, maybe there were 12, 13, it was becoming more salient for businesses. And then, everyone always looks to America in Norway for obviously, not only from business aspects, from the climate, but also as kind of, what should one say, that leading star. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, and everyone knowing, the racism, the history of slavery, and understanding sort of the just how strange it would be that
Sure.
America could have an African American as a president.
Yeah.
It became a fascination. Yeah, it became. Something that I think even Republicans were a little bit in awe, because I'll never forget after Obama won, Republicans abroad in Norway, the chair and the vice chair just came and gave me a hug and said, "Wow!" I mean, even they were proud. It became sort of a journey of how far we can go.
Well, I think a lot of people try, both back home and here in Norway, they try to downplay the importance of President Obama being President Obama. That was such an important moment in the United States. And then knowing how engaged Norway is with American politics,
Absolutely.
It's just so easy to forget what a big deal that was.
It was hugely important, and I think it was very motivating. Yeah, it was at the same time, we also now see the fallout. Yeah, we now see what sort of happened in the back room, and the reaction to it. But it, and the themes of hope and change, were just so powerful that it was. It was a phenomenal campaign, and really a phenomenal 4 years that ended up being 8 years, and I have to say I was lucky. It was a space there that was open. And
well, you said your friend said that you would have a powerful voice in Democrats abroad. What were they thinking? What were your qualifications to be that potential powerful voice? Which, by the way, you are a powerful voice for American politics here.
I think it was also because I was working with diversity and inclusion, so that having the first African American, that I was better placed to be able, or not better, or just uniquely placed, I should say, to be able to help people understand how amazingly significant this is, and not only for Americans, but really for the rest of the world, to see that minorities, representation is if you can't be it if you can't see it, as we say it, as kids say.
So it's I've always gotten the impression, like I said, that Norway is very involved. They really pay attention to American politics. And along those lines, I'm getting the impression that more and more Norwegians are more and more disappointed with America because of American politics. You mentioned a few minutes ago, you said something about the fallout of, the results of Barack Obama becoming president. Would you say that fallout can be personified in the Trump administration?
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's important to understand what they're disappointed about. I think that
tell us, what do you think? What do they mean when they say they're disappointed?
Because I think what they see how quickly the shift was from someone like Obama to someone like Trump. I think that the disappointment is that you could fall for the white supremacist after you've had an African American. They're disappointed that the rest of the American people didn't see this. They're disappointed that the systems didn't understand what was going on. I think that obviously the disappointment was dire after 4 years under Trump.
Sure.
Having to live with, because Norway as a country, had to, it was on the other side of all the, what Trump did for in the humanitarian context, what he did in the climate, what he, he made pretty lasting, significant changes, what he did in the Middle East, in Israel. So it was, I think the disappointment was how quickly one could change direction. Yeah,
because it was a rather abrupt change. It was very abrupt.
Yeah, and I think also, even though there's always been an Democratic and Republican political agenda, there's always been sort of a common American agenda. Yeah. But with Trump, there wasn't. With Trump, it was whims and fancies and other Russia and Korea. It was and Turkey, and it was the authoritarian, which I think really disappointed. Not only Norway, but I would say really the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Yeah? Let me ask you this: were you surprised about this abrupt turnaround from Obama to Trump? Did it surprise you? Because when it originally happened, I was shocked. My jaw hit the floor when that man won. My jaw hit the floor several times. It hit the floor when not when he announced. I figured that was just some kind of Hollywood game he's playing. But my jaw hit the floor when he actually started getting popular. My jaw hit the floor when he won the Republican nomination, and my jaw hit the floor when he beat Hillary. But very quickly after he began his presidency, I started rethinking to the point where I came to the realization that I shouldn't be surprised, because didn't his administration personify an element of the United States socially and politically that has always been there? If we think about it, shouldn't we not really be that surprised?
Absolutely, but I think at the same time we've never seen it in so overt. I would always say there's always been a racist element. But yes, so back to the question: was I surprised? I think I was in shock. Actually,
I was for a while.
I was truthfully in shock, and I think 4 years. I think I lived with an anxiety, and that is a little inexplicable, because it was like this daily need to read. I mean, I'm not kidding. My morning routine is to go to the New York Times. I go to the American news before I go to the Norwegian news. The New York Times, to read my Twitter feed, to read what he said, and to listen to my favorites. It was this obsession with trying to follow what was going on and also being in pure disbelief, at really the systemic damage that he's attempted to do, and also the But I mean, I'm and I'm sorry to use such accolades when I speak, but I am a staunch Democrat, that I think his 4 years under Trump has been a little bit in shock.
Yeah, but you know what? It has been shocking, and for anyone, everybody, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you've got to admit this has been a shock. Now, I get it. I understand that people wanted a change. I understand the appeal of a non-politician, but what I don't understand, at the same time as I'm going to say I don't understand this, I'm still not surprised. I don't understand how people can get behind someone who is obviously toxic, obviously mean-spirited, obviously racist. Look at it this way. If you're a Republican and you have to spend so much time defending why you don't think your president is a racist, then he's probably a racist.
Yeah.
If you have to spend so much time.
I think also what scared me in the end was also the realization that I came is that, yes, I had the same reflections that you did, but then I had also the reflection is that maybe there are that many Americans that are really racist. Yeah.
Well, there's at least that many Americans who are willing to tolerate racism. I don't believe that every Trump follower was a racist, but I do believe that every Trump follower, at the very least, didn't think that his racism was that bad. Yeah. I truly believe that.
But I think I'll never forget when Obama won. I think even for myself, I realized demographics are how important they are. And I realized that it's really the changing face of America that elected Trump, that elected Obama, and it is also the changing face of America that has created Trump, that has energized his base, that has energized Republicans because they are so afraid of losing power. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that, people cannot say that Trump won because most Americans wanted him to win, because that's not true when we look at the numbers. Now I can't remember the numbers, but there were several million more votes that Hillary Clinton had than Trump.
3.5.
But I do believe that Trump won because of some very prominent weaknesses in our election system, namely the Electoral College.
Absolutely.
I also believe that this man won because Democrats got lazy. Maybe Democrats got a little bit arrogant.
Yeah, I wouldn't say arrogant. We were a little confident. We really thought that he was so far out there to the right that there was no way that this could happen. And then we didn't. I mean, Hillary didn't go to Wisconsin. She didn't go to some of the states that ended up being relatively significant.
I remember watching in the run up to the final days of the election. I'm like, what Hillary? What are you doing? They started to talk on CNN. I remember even seeing Fox News talking about her not going to places like Michigan and Wisconsin and spending very little time in Ohio. And I remember thinking, come on, Hillary, this is looking good. Remember, we all thought that she was far ahead and we thought it was looking good. But I remember having a little bit of doubt about her overconfidence, her lack of caution.
I think another area that really failed is we're also polling. I mean, the polling, they also underpolled in the areas that Trump won. They didn't even bother to poll. So there was this sort of this consensus, and maybe in one sense it was good that the whole political system had a little bit of a wake up call. Yeah. That, we can't take anything for granted anymore. So, I mean, polling vastly improved in this election cycle. But there were really a sequence of systemic failures that unfortunately prohibited Hillary. But I was in shock. I'll never forget. I was supposed to be on NRK. They had the champagne ready. We were going to. It was going to be women, and I couldn't leave home. I was bawling my eyes out on the shoulders of my son, who was at the time maybe 16 or 17. And then NRK wanted to come to my house, and my son said, "No, nobody's coming here. You are."
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. I mean, it was a shock. It was embarrassing. I mean, I'll say it straight up. It was embarrassing to have that man in the White House. It was embarrassing. I remember the morning after the election, I went to the gym to get in some training, and I walk in, and it's the same crowd at this gym, same crowd that's been there for the last 20 years. So we've always had a lighthearted, joking thing back and forth. So I walk in, and there's one guy sitting at a table drinking a cup of coffee, and he started. And all he could get out of his mouth was something to the effect, so now you're president. And I wasn't in the mood. I couldn't. I couldn't. I just couldn't. And that's what I'm talking about, that shock, that embarrassment. But in the shock and embarrassment were there for the last 4 years, the entire time. But quite quickly after that shock set in, then I started to realize, you know what? I'm not surprised, because that element... that element is there, and it is prevalent. It doesn't dominate the United States, but it is there, and it gained in prevalence, it gained in voice, and it gained in numbers throughout the entire Obama administration. Now, some people will say that President Obama caused a lot of division. No, he didn't. America became divided because there were a lot of people who just didn't like that. It was his presence caused division. Thank you. Yeah? Exactly. Exactly. Very well put. So I wasn't, when I think it through, I am not surprised that we had to go through these last 4 years. I'm not surprised.
I'm surprised we had to go through it. But
are we better off now? Are we better off now because of it?
I think we're better off in knowing what we're dealing with.
Yes,
you know what I mean? It's always kind of like, we know the true landscape. Yeah. We know the true colors of people. Yeah. But I think, don't forget that, yes, Trump got 80 million votes, or no, something I can't remember.
79 to 83, I forgot.
Yeah, but Biden got vastly, I think now it's almost 7 million more. So, the predominant feeling in America is not in the Trump alley.
And you say you say we shouldn't forget, but I would say that that lesson has already been driven home, and we see it with this very decisive Biden victory. Now, I think the main thing to think about is keeping our motivation up, keeping this momentum going. It seems that we are so far, but we're only just a little over 100 days in. Do you think that America, the left in America, can keep this momentum, can keep this focus so that the next election goes even more in favor of the left? What do you think?
I think so. I think I've been duly impressed, and the funny thing is I can actually say I have proof that I said BidenHarris in the beginning. Okay, in the beginning, because I could see the significance of having Kamala Harris there, but not as president, but as vice president. Perfect. And Biden, he just oozes of experience. And calmness. And also the fact that I think Donald Trump and all the Republicans were also fearful of Biden.
Oh, absolutely. That's why they attacked him as they did.
Exactly. And that's why very early, went to Ukraine to try to find dirt on him. Yeah. So I think they've done an amazing job. And I've always said, in the first 2 years, he's got to just do things as quickly as possible. My man has done things faster than I ever thought he could.
Yes.
And even this transportation bill is 5 times bigger than I thought he would push through. And I think they got this. I think they got this, and then even more.
I think they're doing the right things. But what do you think of? Okay, let's talk about the Biden-Harris agenda for a second. I like everything they're saying. I agree. The momentum is there. They're doing the right things. They're saying the right things. But do you think that there is a potential impassable brick wall with the wonderful gentleman, Democrat from West Virginia, who repeatedly voices his disapproval in the Biden-Harris agenda? What part do you think that's going to play going forward?
I think Joe Manchin
he's allowed to feel what he feels, but I just worry about what that's going to do to the momentum going forward.
Yeah, I think, but I mean, he is a guy that understands his power. And he's not going to let go of that power. He's not going to let go of the power in the media and the power in the Congress, And he's going to use that to his benefit. But that's where it's so nice to have someone like Biden, who hopefully is able to have a good dialogue with him and make sure that there's a win-win. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to end up landing on what should one say?
Some sort of bipartisan solution.
Yeah, but it's on. Is it $15 or is it $11?
Exactly.
Is it $5 trillion or is it $3 trillion? Or are you going to give to my state or you're not going to give to my state? But Joe Manchin is a smart guy.
Well, sure he is, absolutely, and he's really flexing his muscle these days. It worries me, but I guess. You bring up a good point. Okay, we want $15 for minimum wage, but because of Joe Manchin, it might be $12, for example. And okay, that's better than this. What is it, $7.50 that it is now? So
absolutely, but I think the Democrats. I think we understand the system better than ever. Yeah, I think the win in Georgia is a true reflection of how organized we are on the ground. Yeah,
wasn't that a beautiful thing to see? Wasn't
Absolutely.
It just beautiful?
And you know what? What's even more amazing is that, yes, they can throw out these new laws and these new regulations, and there are people in Georgia analyzing how to overcome that. Yeah. Because what I don't think Republicans understand is that the harder you make it for us to vote, the more determined we are to figure out how to make it easier for our people and everybody.
Do you think these attempts at voter suppression are directly pointed at Black Americans, or do you think it's just a general Republican effort to quell the numbers among Democrats, period?
I think it's probably the latter, but it's the easiest. The easiest way to get to the latter is to look at the African Americans, or Black Americans, and that's actually something that's funny that I'd like to talk about, because we used to say African American, and now it's Black American, and I've always liked Black American.
I always say
I've trained my head to say African American because everyone else does, and then all of a sudden now everyone's saying Black American. So
I guess I'm stubborn.
Oh, you're saying.
I guess I'm stubborn because I've always held on to Black Americans. That's what I always said when I was a kid. And
you too. Yeah.
Now I'm not a kid at heart, but I still say Black Americans. Yeah.
But you know what I think is fascinating? It's because after Kamala Harris, then they stopped saying African American, because she's not African American. But nobody talks about it, and that irritates me, because I've even written on Twitter to her sister, can you bring this up to light and help us understand? Because it's sort of like it's a shift in the vocabulary, and I find those little nuances in diversity extremely important.
I think it is
only important if you talk about it, and people can understand why the shift in vocabulary is important. But anyway, sorry. But
that's a good point. That's a good point, though. The discussion around diversity needs to be had. That's one thing that I've been saying loud and clear since I've been here in Norway, especially over the last couple of years, is that discussion needs to be had, and so many people are afraid to have it. So many, as a Black American here in Norway, I see it so often where I will engage someone in a discussion about these things, about all things skin color, about all things culture, about all things diversity and inclusion. And people go into a defense position immediately. And it's like, where does that sense of being attacked come from? I don't think that, in general, I think Norwegians are very accepting people all the way up until the discussion about the condition of the minority comes up. Then they kind of clam up, back off, and raise their fists. I don't know what your experience is, but
no, absolutely. I mean, that's universal, isn't it?
And I love that. And I love my Norwegian friends and family here, but that seems to be the default, that they go on the defensive.
But I think that's talking about race is hard. Talking about race requires a lot of empathy. It requires a lot of humility. It requires sort of characteristics in us that maybe we don't exercise every day. And it requires the ability to take a perspective of another race. That a lot of people lack. A lot of people lack contact. A lot of people lack understanding. They lack knowledge. So that so that I think that's actually why I love working with diversity, because you're entering into a zone where it's hard for everybody. But it's but it's so important to make people feel safe. In that uncertainty,
it's important, and presentation is important. I was speaking with a good friend of mine, Robert Gray, a few of my podcast episodes back, and we were talking about how do you approach that discussion, and the delivery of the message is quite important, namely because people have a tendency to go into that defensive position. So the presentation of the theme is quite important. I try to put it out there. I'm a soft-spoken guy. I smile a lot. There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm a little bit large, but there's nothing to be afraid of. I try to put it out there in such a way that it's my hands are open, my arms are open. Let's talk about this.
But I mean, even I was talking to an African American or a Black American and a Norwegian who's also half Black and half Norwegian, and we were talking about this, the Somali situation with hijab and social control, and one of them said, well, maybe they should assimilate more, and I just, so I've spent a lot of time explaining the difference between assimilation and integration.
Well, tell us. Put some words on that. Tell us about the difference between assimilating and integrating.
And well, I think also because assimilation is really very American terms. They really see that, foreigners that come to America, they need to assimilate. They need to forget their language. This is what had to happen to the Irish, to the Italians, to the Poles, and now, even more so to those coming from Syria and obviously African countries. And it's more that you give away, your identity, your cultural identity from your homeland to assimilate into our culture. So that means that you adapt the culture of the majority. So,
yes.
Not the, forget your minority status. So you become sort of a quasi token wannabe majority. Whereas integration is more where you can bring your true self. You bring your cultural identity. You bring your hijab. You bring your would say burqa, but you bring your traditions, your foods, your language, and you find a way to dance with the native. The native culture, and I think that was actually an interesting thing to talk to an African American about.
Right.
And to understand the difference and to understand how amazingly important those two words are.
Yes.
And the distinction of those two words in assimilation.
Well, there's a big difference, and it's quite important that people understand the difference because it has to do with expectations. I'm not interested in assimilating, and I even hesitate. I even hesitate at times to use the word integration, at least when it comes to me. I just want to be myself, and isn't this good enough? Isn't this good enough for Norway? I think it is. So integration, I don't need to do any kind of shun. Assimilation, integration.
But and that's one thing that is so.
Am I arrogant? I don't know.
No, absolutely not. But it's because diversity used to be just diversity, and then it became DEI, which is the E is equity and the I is inclusion. And the inclusion is really where the integration is where where you can ask people. I feel I can bring my true self. I can be myself in an organization. That is such a powerful statement. And that is really what integration is about. Is that you can be your true self in the society at large that you dance in.
Well, I like that definition of integration. Maybe I'll start to integrate now.
There you go. You can be yourself and dance.
Let me ask you. Let me go back a little bit. Now you became a member of Democrats Abroad right around when President Obama was doing his thing, and then
I'm sure I was a member way before, but I was active in the board before then.
And you were actually the chair of Democrats Abroad for a while. How long were you in that position?
I was way too long. I think I was chair for almost 12 years. You're only supposed to be there, or maybe I was. I know I was there for the entire time Obama was president, so that would be 8 years.
8 years plus, then,
Yeah.
Well, why was it? Why do you say it was too long?
Well, because actually in the statutes, you're only supposed to be there for 2 years at a time, and you're not supposed to go more than 2 consecutive terms.
So how did it come to be then that you were there that long?
Well, then I think I ended up being vice chair and somebody else ended up being chair. That's right. And then he decided, I don't want to do this anymore. You do it again. So then I had to step in, and then you can also be chair if nobody runs against you. And that happened 1 year. And then,
is that a rough job to have? Is that a...
It depends. It's in an election year, it's a very tough job because it's a lot of media and a lot of events.
And it's all voluntary too. There's no salary.
You get no money. But in a sense, I think politics is. I'm glad politics isn't about money. I'm glad you don't get paid to think and be what you want to say. Not to be proud, but
you're not beholden to anyone.
Yeah,
when there's no money involved.
And the passion comes from the heart, not from because you're thinking about your wallet.
Sure.
But it's and I think when I was chair in the first or in the 8 years I was chair, I was very much into also having events with others, so that we could get Norwegians talking about American politics and really have a kind of an intellectual discourse, because there's so many Norwegians that know much more about American politics than I could ever imagine.
Yeah, I tell you, they're really, for my American listeners, Norwegians love American politics.
And they know so much, and there's, and they help me understand it, we really did a good job in trying to bring them also to the front, so that other Democrats could sort of understand their analysis and really almost understand what's going on over there, because it isn't so easy being.
It's not.
Yeah. So far from home, really trying to understand, because it's you can talk to your family, you can talk to your friends, but I think also a lot of Americans become more interested in American politics when they're outside of the country.
Oh, I did. Definitely.
You see it from a totally different perspective.
Absolutely.
You hear more about maybe the policies that you didn't before, and not only that, coming to a social democratic country like Norway with free medicine, or free healthcare and childcare and the like, you begin to understand and question the differences. So that it becomes maybe more interesting to follow, but it's wonderful to be active in Democrats abroad. And
so it kept you in motion. It kept you busy. I saw that really cool picture of you and President Obama on your Facebook feed. Where was that? Where was that, by the way?
He came to Oslo in connection with a meeting at Oslo Business Forum in September. What was that? That must have been 3 years ago. Maybe 4 years ago. And I was very good friends with the ambassador, Barry White, who was also ambassador appointed by Barack Obama.
Yeah.
I call him kind of my grandfather. He was so close. We actually became, so that when we're doing media performances, I'd call him and get some tips on what's going on, Barry. Nice. And he was a lawyer.
What a great resource to have.
Oh, he was an amazing guy, and we really saw eye to eye in a lot of issues. And so I'd always been joking with him, the one thing you got to do for me, I got to meet Obama. If there's one thing in life I got to do, I got to meet Obama. And he was like, I don't know, Lisa, I'll see what I can do. But when Obama was coming for Oslo business region, it was major secrecy. And I've had meetings with the Obama Foundation, and they know who I am, and I've been writing to them. Oh, can I meet him? Can I see him? And nothing. But it was the day before he was there that he said, I got this amazing email that I think I should probably print it out and put it on my wall. Where President Obama would like you to be his official guest. And I just, but I was speechless. I can imagine. I can speak to a wall, literally, and I've never been so nervous in my whole life.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine. I've met some famous people up through the years, but I think if I had the chance to official guest. Come on now. I mean, that, oh God.
It was, and then the whole time he was talking, I actually sat in the front row in the huge auditorium, right in front of him. So it was amazing. And
that's almost as cool as when I was in the front row at the Prince concert when he was in Oslo in 2011. almost as cool.
Oh, I'm so mad I didn't go to that concert. I was so close. I actually ended up not hitting send to buy the ticket. I don't know what happened. And then he unfortunately passed away right afterwards. But you were so lucky.
This was in 2011. It was 2 days after the tragedy in Oslo and on Utøya.
Yeah, exactly.
2 days after, and he did 2 shows. He did a show the evening of Utøya, and we went to the one the day after, my wife and I.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of emotion in the air. and he really captured it. I mean, I'm kind of not kidding when I say that meeting President Obama would almost be as eclectic as that moment would, but we were right there, right in the front row, and he was a little over an arm's length away.
Wow.
And we had eye contact. I mean, we had that direct interaction with him. He actually sweated on us. He was playing a guitar solo.
So you have his DNA.
And he spun around and his sweat flung out. And I started screaming. I mean, you could have photoshopped me in on a scene from 1962 at a Beatles concert with all those little blonde-haired girls. That's how I was.
I would have been with you. But,
great show.
They were both sold out. So I was
okay. We jumped on that right away, got our tickets, and we were on the floor right in front of the stage. Oh, it was wonderful.
Wow.
Wonderful experience. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this stuff.
No, but it is the same thing with Obama. But I have to say, when I met Obama, I was also told to be last in line so I could have more time with him.
Oh, how nice! They took care of you.
Nice.
They
were amazing.
Well,
Princess,
that speaks. I just want to shoot in with this. That speaks to your standing at that time as the chair for Democrats abroad. I mean, that's not, again, it's not a paid position, but it's quite the important position. You are basically the head of the Democrat movement in Norway, and that carries a little bit of weight. That carries a little weight.
And one thing that people don't understand is that we're much different than Republicans abroad because we're part of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Yeah. The Republicans, that's just an interest group. So they have no connection.
Why is that? That's so strange to me.
Well, because it's a matter of governance, and that's just how they decide to govern.
Okay.
In fact, they're called Republicans Abroad in Norway, but that was disbanded a long time ago. So from the Republican side, so
I didn't know
they're supposed to be called Republican Overseas, but they're an interest organization, so they're fully allowed to do, and we need the Republican voice. You know what I mean?
I want to say this. I want to call them out, not by name, but as the organization that they are. I want to call them out because someone towards the top of that organization, I have asked them so many times. I don't need to mention any names, but I've asked them so many times to come on. I'm not a politician, but I'm interested in politics, and I would like to have a discussion because that side of things needs to be heard. And
Absolutely.
it has been scheduled, it has been agreed upon, and then they've backed out for this, that, or the other reason. I'm calling them out. I wish they would come on and do what you're doing right now and have a conversation.
And I think I understand. I mean, I've been in extremely a number amount of debates, and one debate we were actually in Dram, and the chair actually said he's tired of doing these things because he feels like everyone's throwing things at him, and it's like well you shouldn't think that. Don't take it personally. This isn't like in Norwegian sak og person. It's how do you say that in American English?
The subject is not the person. The issue is not the person. Yeah.
But they take it so personally.
Okay. But you know what? Why don't they think we talked about this, you and I, just a few minutes ago, the messaging, how that message is packaged is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a certain let's all admit it. There's a certain harshness to the Republican message. There's a certain amount of exclusionism in the Republican message. So I don't understand their incredulous response to the way people are not accepting their message, or to the way people are answering their message. They should not be that surprised. They've got to look at the packaging.
But I think also, I of course I agree with you, but I think Norway is such a liberal country, so they have very few followers in Norway, so that it becomes in one sense maybe a little bit hard for them because they're such a minority, a minority voice for which they're not used to in America. In America, they have a much greater standing than they do, obviously.
They've got it rough here in Norway. But having said that, they do have people who do think a lot alike. I was on Facebook today. NRK put out, because it's Ramadan for our Muslim brothers and sisters, and they put out an article on some gentleman here in Norway who is fasting for Ramadan, and he said something to that effect, that it's good for him. And oh my gosh, the comments that came, they were written in Norwegian, but they could have been taken from the Republican National Convention. So there are people here who do think a lot. It's quite similar to the Republican message. But again, I believe it's the packaging of that Republican message. They haven't figured out how to package it and make it fit for Norway. It's an art form, I guess. It's an art form, I guess. But there has to be a certain amount of willingness to change. I don't think they're willing to change their messaging. They don't seem to be.
But I think they're just on the wrong side of popular politics. Yeah, they're.
And I think we're allowed to say that. I believe there is a right and wrong. And I do believe that on most issues, 9 out of 10, they are on the wrong side. They're on the wrong side of humanity. They're on the wrong side of compassion. They're on the wrong side of they're just on the wrong side on way too many issues.
Way too many.
And we're seeing that. We're seeing that more and more often. They're seeing it in their numbers. That's why they're doing these things, and I believe it's being done out of desperation. These things with voter suppression, these certain issues that they've taken up, I believe it's out of desperation because they see that people just aren't following. People just aren't digging. To put it in street terms, they're just not digging that shit.
Yeah, but also it's the political reality that if you don't have the numbers, if you can't get the voters, then you fix the system. Then you fix the system so that so that you can still.
They're good at that. They are good at that.
They're very good, and I think that's where Democrats are a little. I don't want to say naive. We're just too nice.
Well,
we really are too nice.
Yeah, but again,
but I think now Biden, he's figured it out. I mean, Biden, my man, he and Kamala have decided
they're moving and shaking.
They're moving and shaking. And also he's doing what Obama didn't. If I could ever criticize Obama for one thing, he didn't do enough in those first 2 years before he lost majority.
I agree.
And Biden is he realizes what was it, 40 executive orders which were almost getting to be a little bit embarrassing, but it's like, why not? Why not?
Well, but he's showing. He's showing he sincerely wants change by putting forward these massive legislative things. With infrastructure. Thank you, infrastructure, and other things. So I think we're in a good position. I think we are.
We are in a good spot, but I think it's. As you alluded to earlier, there's still a few wild cards in the Senate, like Joe Manchin from West Virginia, and you never know. There's what's the other one's name? There's a woman, I can't remember her name, but there's two of them.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit difficult, but I think. And what I think is actually the most interesting is everyone was saying, but Biden's going to have such a hard time with the progressives, with AOC and the squad, and they're going to kill him, and he's not going to be progressive enough. They're totally quiet. I mean, AOC has even gone out and said that, he is more progressive than I ever imagined. So everybody on our side is collaborating, except for Joe Manchin.
but I think we're going. And again, if minimum wage has to be, instead of $15 an hour, if it's $12, okay, that's still massive progress. So, but take it easy, Senator Manchin. Take it easy. Don't be too radical.
No, exactly.
Let me ask you something, Lisa. How did you get here to Norway? What's your story?
It's actually quite funny. I was what was I, 25 years old, which is quite funny because that's how old my oldest son is now. And I went to a nightclub with one of my best girlfriends in New York. I was a New York district manager for Playtex, so I was very sort of career oriented. I often wonder where I would have been if I hadn't come to Norway. I was 25. I had 5 people working for me. I was, just going that way. And we were at a bar, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden 2 guys came up. One sat next to her, one sat next to me, and I got, yeah, exactly. And so we were instantly sort of irritated, like, oh God, so,
here you go.
What do you want?
Yeah.
And so this was the Norwegian that I met, the infamous Norwegian. That ended up being the reason that I came to Norway. So it was a wild romance.
How long after you guys met did you end up getting married?
Oh, that took like 2 years, I think. But I said, as I had a real good talk with my mom, because my mother was, both my parents grew up in Harlem. And so they're like, serious hardworking people, except my mother was always a stay-at-home mom. But and she always said, Lisa, you make it on your own. You do not become dependent on anyone. And she was always asking me, what is it I really want to do? And I've always wanted to do my MBA. I really wanted to go study further. And she said, okay, if you're going to go to Norway, you make demands. Either you get a good job, just like at the same level that you are, or you get your MBA. And if those conditions aren't met, you don't move. Well, okay.
That's good advice.
And so and then it's so funny because I said that to the then boyfriend, and 2 weeks later, so this is where face and where what would you ask for. 2 weeks later, Norges Markedshøyskolen, which is sort of, I guess they ended up being merging with BI, came out with the first MBA in English. 2 weeks later. And then he was like, see this, you could do this, you can take your MBA. And I was like, whoa, mommy, look. And she was like, shit. And I said, well, I have to get in. I haven't taken my GMAT. And they said, you're in, with your background. And, 25 had been working basically since I was 21. And, they what did they say? I didn't have to take the GMATs to get in. And so that's why I came to Norway. I literally, had my conditions, and I had the goal of being the top student, and I was the top. Well, it was 3 of us that got the same GPA, so I was like one of those overachievers, flink pika. I studied way too much. I'm just like such a idiot when it comes to that. And that's how I got to Norway.
Wow.
Yeah, met a Norwegian at a bar.
Were you scared?
Absolutely not. But I think also when I was 7, my dad, who worked at DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, they sent us to Jamaica, the West Indies. So we were in Jamaica for 2 years, from when I was 11 to 13.
So that whole being abroad thing was nothing to you.
Nothing. And then they also, after that, then they went to Belgium, and then they went to Thailand. So that for me, it was more normal. Not normal, but I loved Europe, even though Norway was a bit further north. And I was actually a little arrogant because, most Norwegians think, oh, you have no idea where Norway is. And I was like,
yeah.
Please,
that was there. That was my experience too.
I know where the hell that is. Yeah. It's like, it's not, I know Norway's not the capital of Sweden. And,
no, it's a capital of Germany. I get that a lot. Yeah. I get that a lot from friends back home. Isn't that the capital of Germany?
Do you really? Yes. No, but I was a little arrogant there because I had been overseas quite a bit, so it was.
I've been overseas a lot too. I was when I was in the U.S. Marines. I was in Asia, Okinawa, and then a few places around there. But that didn't really apply. When I came to Norway, I was so, you know what made it easy for me? And I talk about my Snoopy, my wife, I call her Snoopy. I talk about my Snoopy on just about every podcast episode, but I don't think I've ever said this. Me coming to Norway was amazingly smooth and easy because I had so much trust in her. We had been married at that time for about 14 months. We had been together for about 2 years. Okay. So the relationship was there and the trust was there. And I felt like, and I pretty much just gave myself totally into her care. She is going to get me through this. She is going to help me. She is going to guide me, and she is going to make this is going to be easy because she's there. If it hadn't been for that, I don't think, in spite of all my time in Asia and experiencing all of that, I don't think that I would have been the person who could have easily adjusted to move to a foreign country. I'm a quiet country boy at heart. I grew up in semi-rural Ohio.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I was a police officer in the Chicago suburbs. That was a totally, I'll put it to you this way. Here's a good way of putting it. Me going from my home life in rural Ohio and then moving to Chicago area, that was a bigger change. That was a bigger culture shock than it was for me to move from Chicago area to Norway.
Wow.
Yeah. Because Snoopy, just her being there and her being that piece of home that I could take with me, that's what made it easy for me. But no, go ahead.
I know I went through it. I think it was definitely difficult. I think, because I was the only Black person at school. I lived in Frogner, and I think I was the only Black person in Frogner. I was followed around in all the stores until they realized it was American, and then I was everybody's best friend, which I think really irritated.
We got snatched up by a security guard. Those Securitas security guards. We got snatched up. This was back in 2003, I think it was, when my mother came to visit. So it's me, my ma, and Snoopy at one of the shopping centers here in Drummond. And now Drummond has, as you may know, Drummond has really changed over the last 15, 20 years. And back then there were immigrants, there were Black people here, but not that many. And I think that Drummond at that time was a lot more unsure of how to deal with this immigrant thing back then. So we go into a shopping center and into some store. I needed to buy a steering wheel cover. I had a Chevrolet Blazer and I needed a steering wheel cover. So we walk in, all three of us, and I pick out the steering wheel cover, go up and pay for it, and the lady says, "Do you want a bag for that?" And I said, "No, that's okay. Just give me the receipt." She gave me the receipt. I got the steering wheel cover. We put it in another bag that we had, and we walk out. And next thing I know, one of those security guards, he didn't grab me. He grabbed Snoopy and told us to get back in there. He's going to detain us because we stole something.
Wow.
And it turns out that he just, I don't know, I guess he was over ambitious because we went back in and we, the lady who, so it all worked out. But I can remember people being more ill at ease in my presence back then than they are now. And I would imagine that you probably experienced that in an even larger degree because you were here even earlier in Norway's, let's call it, history of immigrants.
Yeah, and I think that there's two factors that have to do with that. One is, if you want to go into the theoretical aspects that is also sort of behind mentoring, which is what I also do. I want to talk about that too. I want to talk about that too. My organization. One is contact. Yeah, that's because when I came, 2% immigrants. Not all Norwegians had contact with other immigrants, so that then they become, very much the others. Then their unconscious biases and what they read about in the media that they're, criminal or which is usually 9 out of 10 the first thing that's on the top of the list, or somebody that's going to be using the system. Yeah. So without contact, and I can actually even remember when I was in the Integration and Diversity Directorate, where I worked for 2 years, when we had responsibility for figuring out where all the refugees would live. Yeah. And one of the principles that we started with is that we wanted every municipality in Norway to have immigrants. We weren't only going to put them in Oslo. We weren't only going to put them in Drammen. We were going to put them in the north and the south, all over, because we just wanted to normalize their presence.
Yeah.
And now, so when I started there in 2007, I think, there were not immigrants in every municipality, but now there are. And now you can also see what that's done for the integrating, or the integration barometer, because now people are more accepting, yeah?
Yes. Well, I can remember... Yeah. We also have a home up at our place on Seiland, up in Finnmark. That's where my wife's family is from. And I can remember the first time we went up there, the first couple of times we went up there, back in 2002, 3, 4, 5, maybe 2006, all the way up until then, when we would go into town, into Alta, for example, or up to Hammerfest, and the stares I would get. Not hostile, pure unfiltered curiosity, especially from the kids. Especially from the kids. And that is simply because they had never seen anyone like me before. And now that is different, and it really is quite amazing that things have changed so much. I'm not saying it's perfect here for minorities, far from it, but it has certainly changed and become a lot better very quickly over a relatively short period of time. I've been here for 19 years, and I see the difference.
Oh, yeah. I see a tremendous difference. And I think also because one of the positive things is that you see more connections with immigrant being positive rather than being the negative, and that's actually why I started the first project I started, which brought me into sort of the diversity field, was the top 10. And that project was because I was so frustrated with how the media portrayed immigrants.
Did you say top 10?
Top 10.
Top 10, yeah.
If you Google thetop10.no and THE, I think it's still there, actually. It was a project I had that ran for 11 years. It was sponsored by the government without me even asking. It's actually even a funny story, because I applied for funding to the government. I was working at, Defense Communications as one of the divisional directors, but I just was so passionate that I had to change the discourse. So I applied for funding with a researcher to the Ministry of the Kommunal Regional Departement, or whatever it was. And, to do this project where we would focus on the positive, we would focus on immigrants that succeeded and, try to put them in the media in order to sort of counter the discourse, the negative discourse. And they actually called me and said that this is the strangest application we've ever seen. This has nothing to do with what you, what you applied for, but we love it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So if you re-rig it this way, we'll give you funding, because we just think this is so important.
But now what did that funding cover? Did it enable you to hire workers?
No. It was a short-term project, so it was and I didn't need funding for me. I already had a job, so it was.
But I'm thinking about other people to work with you to.
But this was more a project, so it wasn't sort of to fund the company. So it was a project focus, so it was to fund and give funding to the researcher, so she got duly paid, and time for somebody else that actually did more of the coding, and on the research aspect.
Right.
But we built a website, so there was a bit of funding that we needed to do that. So we basically just went out and just found, and this was only focused on women in the first year, what we considered the top female immigrants in Norway. And top was not only that you had like a formal leadership. We said that you had, you could be an immigrant, you had a good story, or you were, we had leadership was in several different categories. So it wasn't only favoring people in formal leadership positions. Right. And we had a jury that just, chose them. And then I think our lucky break was also when we went to announce it, and we went to Dagbladet, and
famous Norwegian newspaper, for those who don't know.
and we were a little unsure, and I was thinking, oh, maybe we'll get a little box in the corner, and it ended up being on the front page of Dagbladet.
Wow.
In the first year, and then it just exploded. But the cover was, these are the top 10 successful immigrant women, and this is how they succeeded. I mean, so it totally blew up
what a
the media.
Beautiful light to shine. Wow.
And why did I talk about that? But I can't remember. But I think that was Norway then.
Yeah.
So that was the media discourse, and you just needed like a paradigm shift to start talk about positive stories of then it was women, and then the next year I had to do women and men because they started to complain. Well, what about the men? Yeah, okay, all right.
You know what? I think that the whole "what about men" thing still needs to have a light shining on it. I was just talking with someone about this a couple of days ago. Now, what was it? It's been 3 weeks since I had my little media blitz on radio and TV and all that stuff. And when it was all over, and I started thinking, wow, that was fun. But then I started thinking, oh my gosh, how sad, because there's other black men here in Norway, aren't there? The answer to that is yes. And it's like, okay, but, and not just black men, let's say minority men here in Norway. And the answer to that is yes, there are. And then the next question I had was, well, where are they in the media? There's only a couple of minority men that are hired on NRK or TV2, the main television stations, but they're not front and center. You don't see a lot of minority men panelists in any kind of debate or discussion on TV.
I would say that there's more minority men than there are minority women. Yeah,
are there really?
I can think of all the minority men. I can think of one minority woman. There's Irina. Otherwise in NRK you have the guy that's now gone to the Mideast. You've got
you have Irina Rocky, the one that interviewed
she's the
me.
only woman. And you have Samantha Sam, who's half Mexican, half Norwegian. That's all. You have much more men. I think men. Sorry, in TV2 you have Gaddafi.
Yes. Yeah.
It was amazing.
He's great, by the way. He's great, by the way.
He's amazing. But you have no immigrant women in TV2. Yeah. So sorry, I think immigrant women still have. Although you have Sally, I'm her biggest fan. She's she's in the wheelchair, and she's now taking over TV Super.
Yes, I heard that. Yeah.
Oh, she's just
isn't that
amazing.
Great? Yeah.
She's
perfect for that. Perfect for that position. Her sense of humor, she just radiates confidence behind the camera. She's awesome.
Absolutely.
She's awesome. No, I don't know.
So, but I agree. There are more and more voices that could be that could be heard and should be heard. But I over representation. I don't think men are doing so bad. I still think men have an advantage over us.
I'm going to rethink that. I'm going to come with some numbers next time.
Okay.
No, I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong, but I guess.
No. I guess be proven wrong. Yeah.
I guess it's just a thought process. It's just a moment of reflection that I've had ever since my little thing a couple weeks back, and I guess what we can agree on is that minorities, period, both men and women. I miss us. I miss us in the media for something other than singing, dancing, or committing a crime. And I don't want to come.
And they actually had my son on Jurik.
Yes.
And that was so cute. And he, obviously he's gotten a lot in his breast milk, as one could say, when it comes to being a Democrat.
Yeah.
But it's. And I think he has the voice of the youth.
Yes, he does.
And so that it becomes, but it's.
You must be so proud of him. What a handsome young man, so well spoken, and.
We were. I think we were a little in shock. It's like, you get to talk about Biden's first 100 days, not me. You. But no, yeah.
But before I let you go, I want to ask you now. Now we're talking about some of the work that you've done to put to highlight immigrants in Norway, minorities in Norway, and then you so you had this project. But you've also done work directly under your company, Catalyst. Tell us what Catalyst does.
Okay, Catalyst. Well, I guess I should talk about the company I had before Catalyst, which is when I had a little NGO, when I had lots of projects. So I took Top 10, which was one project, and then I made other projects, all focusing on immigration and diversity. And one was on diversity in the media. It was on diversity charter, to get companies to sign as charters so that it would say they would do X, Y, and Z. I was very into the Somali community. I just fell in love with the Somali population, and did Norsambru, which was Norwegian Somali bridge building.
Yeah.
And then I did a Nordic Somali Youth Summit. So we went around the Nordics to sort of empower the Somali youth. And then I had Catalyst, which was just a little project at the time. And it was because it started as a pilot in one of the Somali, the bigger projects, because I realized that mentoring was something that was underdeveloped in Norway at the time. This was 2015. In America, it's huge. And I realized that with mentoring, you hit the minority and the majority at the same time. So if you do a really good structured program, you really can make change on, and have domino effects in two different sort of segments. Yeah. And so that became larger and larger. So Catalyst is a company that basically develops, implements, and supports the strength-based mentor programs. And when I say strength-based, it's because when I first started Catalyst, I wanted to make sure it was a little different than just a mentor program, which is really a boring thing. So we use positive psychology. So all the meetings are structured and use methodology based on either your signature strengths or other aspects of positive psychology.
Now, this is mentoring with focus on teens, correct? Or
we started with youth, so we started with the target group from basically 13 to 30, and also with unaccompanied minor youth. But then we've expanded because then we realized we're pretty good at mentoring. So we started to do mentoring for highly skilled immigrants, and also mentoring for newly arrived immigrants.
Okay.
And now we have also been working with Oslo University Hospital on a 3-year research project. So we've developed our own digital presence that supports or platform that supports mentoring. So that's been spinned off into Catalyst Technology, which is a for-profit organization. So it's a long story. So basically I have 2 companies, which is not an ideal situation.
been there, done that, and got real tired.
Yeah, focus.
Yes,
but it's so fun. And now we're doing like the latest thing we've been doing is a reverse mentoring, where we've actually, it's together with Deloitte, which is a big consulting company, and so they've gotten together partners and senior managers and directors, and we've gone out and found immigrant students that are going to be their mentors.
I see. Okay.
And the goal being is they're going to help the Deloitte employees figure out how to be more inclusive, and to have Deloitte as a more inclusive workplace. We just started, and the launch is actually on Tuesday next week.
Oh, congratulations!
So we're experts at mentoring and sort of tailoring it to companies, and
that's some real meaningful work.
Oh, it's I love my job. I feel so privileged to be able to do.
Now you are the CEO, right?
Yeah, and I founded both companies.
But how often do you get boots on the ground? Are you locked into the office because you're at the top, or
That's a good. I think actually this reverse mentoring, I'm boots on the ground.
Okay.
I like to dip my fingers in.
Good.
But unfortunately, I mean, I was up to 12 employees. Now we're down to 6. But that's also because we've sort of re-rigged where we are, our presence. So we're in Oslo and Bergen. And I find it important to get my feet wet.
Yes, yeah.
And it's
that's where you're going to learn the most. That's where you're going to learn the most. Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned, and I have obviously tons of, not tons, or just lots of really clever millennials that are exceptionally intelligent and very passionate about mentoring.
I tell you, millennials get a bad rap, but there are so many of them who are exactly what you said. They're very passionate. They're very focused. When they go in for something, when they go in for a cause, they're there. And this is cause-based work. This whole thing with mentoring and smoothing the path to integration and inclusiveness. It sounds like you're doing some important work.
No, it's very, very meaningful.
Yeah.
I can't complain.
Well, I'm glad to see and to hear that you are enjoying what you do. I just want to tell you, as we wind this up, thank you so much for coming on. You are, I think I told you this before. You talk about mentoring. You have mentored me without even trying to, because as I say, from the very first time I started seeing you on TV, I looked to you as an example on how to, how to touch the issues, how to bring people to that discussion about the issues. It's very important work. And, whether it's more minority men or more minority women, either way, more of us need to be doing this kind of work. We need to be visual. We need to be seen and heard in the media picture here in Norway. And you have, for me anyway, paved the way. You are the example that I look to, and that comes from the heart. So I thank you for that.
Yeah. No, I thank you for this opportunity, and I welcome you to this arena. I think it's an important arena to be in, and and may we see each other often.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're friends now. Now we know each other.
Absolutely. And then now we just have to do it in person.
Yes.
That would be.
Yes. Have you gotten the vaccine yet?
No. Have you?
Not yet, but I did the sign up thing online and all that stuff. So I'm guessing any day now they'll be calling me in. But, when things settle down, when COVID isn't the issue that it is today, we will have the opportunity to sit down and break bread and introduce our families. And
that would be lovely.
Yeah. So let's just plan on that happening.
Absolutely.
Lisa
Thank you
Cooper,
so much, John.
Lisa Cooper, you have a place on this podcast. Anytime you want to come on and chit chat, anything you need to promote, you have a place to do it here. So I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Okay. Thank you.
Stick around for a second here as I say something to my listeners. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the Coming On Podcast with John Allen. If you want to get a hold of me, you can get me at johnallenpod.com. That's JOHNALANPOD.com. Please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Keep listening, keep commenting, and we'll see you again. Bye, everybody.